I'm Anne, co host of Transparency in Teaching, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Live. Thank you so much for making us part of your morning, anywhere in the world that you may be joining us from. Hopefully, you're having a beautiful start to your day, or if it's evening, hopefully you've had a wonderful day as you're winding down. But wherever in the world you are, as always, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for all of your support. Thank you so much for sharing our episodes. Thank you so much for all the great feedback and the reviews. As always, you know that our mission, our vision, and our passion is to connect educators, education professionals, and creators one show at a time. And I'm really excited about today's show. I have an amazing guest that I got to connect with through the ED3 Educators Group. And we'll maybe talk a little bit about that as well as we're talking about the DAOs and talking about Web3 and, technology in education. But today I would love to welcome to the show DuJuan Johnson. DuJuan Johnson, who's joining us from Corona, California this morning. DuJuan, how are you doing this morning?
I am doing great. I am super excited to be here and looking forward to helping to inspire and change lives with you. So I'm super excited to be here and and answer questions if need be.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dewan. I appreciate it. And I know this episode was planned a while ago, but of course, the way schedules work out. But I'm glad that we're here today having these conversations out. And I'm just still so pumped because not only have I already had my great cup of coffee, but just the conversation just pre-show was really great. Just a lot of the commonalities that, you and I have gone through and then, talking about the world of education and of course amplification of creativity, not only for students, but for teachers as well. So we'll get into that right now. But Dewan, this is one of my favorite segments in the show. As I always tell all my guests, every time I invite anybody on the show, it is somebody that I have either connected with or see the work that they're doing or the message, or they portray a message that I stand and believe in, which in this case is the creativity component in education. So, I would love to know kind of like that superhero origin story where DuJuan Johnson comes from. What was that origin story? How did you go into education? Was it something you always wanted to do? And, the work that you're doing now. So, DuJuan, let us know that origin story.
Yeah, no, definitely. I never had any intentions on being an educator at all. And so, my story is um, you know, uh, being young, not really having a lot of life experiences. I just wanted to get paid and make money. that that was the goal. Hopefully I'll find myself in the NBA or some professional sports league and then and live a comfortable life and get paid. That was the goal. So education um came later. And it's funny how it came about. So my story starts kind of I grew up in the inner city of Inglewood, California. I was there until about 15 years old. But in school, I was kind of an oddball in the sense of like I really enjoyed learning. My peers, not so much, but learning and going to school, I was good at it. And I was an honor student. I got all kind of accolades and awards. Felt good to come home and share my certificates or things with my mom. And so I was good. And then at 15, we moved into the suburbs. And so all of the A's and honors and stuff that I had in the hood, if you will, I was failing everything in the suburbs. We moved out to Claremont, California, and the people out there didn't look like me. We didn't communicate the same way. We had a lot of different cultural things, and I really had to adjust and adapt, and I didn't know how. And I think for me, my first time realizing that education, it's not the same everywhere. Uh, there were some gross inequities uh, that I had learned about really quick. But as I said, I took pride in being smart and trying to be one of the brightest ones in my classroom. So I had to learn how to figure it out, and so I could excel. And then also being, one of the few people of color where I was after I moved, I didn't want to fit the narrative or the stereotype. So, I was like, I want to get back to where I was. And so I had an opportunity in a program, and it's still in schools today. I always give them credit up. We're bound, where they really, they tutored. They took me to the side, me and some other kids, and really helped me on the skills I needed in order to excel well in school, and then and prepare myself for post secondary for college. And so that's kind of how the educational piece kind of came about. I eventually went to college. I didn't go to college because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I was still on I don't know what I really want out of life other than just to get paid. But in going to college, what I learned is that it was the best place for me because I was exposed to things that I wouldn't have been in the environments I was in. And then I met other people who looked like me, who share some of, my culture and things that I was interested in, making strides to do better. And that was encouraging and inspiring. And so I wanted to be a part of that. And so I majored in communications because somebody said that was good to do, not because I knew what I wanted to do. And in the school of communications, I remember at this time, you probably remember it too. Like, remember when everybody was making like burning CDs and
Yeah.
DVDs on like the Apple iMac computer, like when they first came out. And so people were doing that. I'm like, man, this is cool. I want to do that. So at the school I was at, they had a program there where they were showing us how to learn on the Macs, how to burn DVDs. And I'm like, "Man, I can make movies. This is awesome." And so at this time, they were also had another component in there where they taught you about graphic design and everything. And to me, it was a brand new world. Like, I'm like, this is amazing. I was always someone who was creative. I like taking things apart and figuring out why they worked and how they worked. I just enjoyed technology. My dad, he always worked in IT, so he was always bringing home, little motherboards and circuit boards and other stuff, and those things were intriguing. So, going back to when I was at college, and I had opportunity to learn how to create some of this stuff in this new platform, right, with the iMac and learning software like Final Cut, or they had like an Avid board. Like, after this, I was like, man, I want to be an editor. Like, I wanted to be an editor. I wanted to make movies. I wanted to make music videos. And so when I graduated from college with my bachelor's, I went into the field. I worked at a couple of production houses, worked at a few studios. I was doing editing, working in, like, it was fun. But what I quickly learned was that oftentimes when you're creating in these different businesses and organizations, once again, I was usually the only one who looked like me, which didn't play too much of a part in it, but I was in a room all day by myself, which I was like, oh, this isn't as fun as I thought. I'm thinking maybe this is more of a hobby than it is a career. Or sometimes you'll have the producers come in and they'll tell you what to do, and then you're just in the dark room editing. And I'm like, I think I like people. Like this, I like the tech piece, but I think I like people too. And so fast forward, I get a opportunity to go to this program during the summer. It's called and they're still around. It's called ID Tech Camp. And so at this camp, this particular one was in Michigan at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And this program, what they do is they bring people in, and I came in as a counselor. And my job was to every week when we get a new group of students, I would teach them in digital arts, robotics, like STEM what we coin now is STEM and STEAM education. At that time, it didn't really have a term. And video production, so stuff I was already good at. So I got an opportunity to teach kids between the ages of 7 and 17. And I was having a blast. And I remember one of my coworkers, they were like, "Hey, DuJuan, when we get off of work, let's all go hang out." And for whatever reason, it clicked. I'm like, this is work, and this seems like fun. And so they were like, well, you may want to consider working in education. I'm like, man, they don't get paid. Like, I don't want to work in education, but I had so much fun in what I was doing. I'm like, I have to consider it. And so when I came back to California after that 9-10 week stint at the University of Ann Arbor, I went in, I took the CBEST, right? I got I got an emergency credential. I was able to sub. And so I started substitute teaching and I loved it. And so people are like, you like being a substitute teacher? Like, don't they treat the subs mean? And I'm like, nah, man, they're not treating me mean. Oftentimes they're like, wow, you're a sub, or, I think I was close or relatively close to their age. And I would just share stories about with them. I had the best time substitute teaching. But once again, it didn't pay really well. And the job I had even as an editor when I was working in those dark rooms all day, like they paid really, really good. So leaving that was tough, but I had more fun, yeah, I guess if you will, being broke and truly enjoying what I was doing every day than I did, prior. And so I substitute taught, but I knew I couldn't do that forever because, like I said, it didn't pay well enough. But I knew I found my lane, and it was more of, all right, what I'm going to do in this lane. I didn't feel competent enough to, be responsible for any one particular subject for a student, but I wanted to be able to teach like the digital arts, communication, and I knew I wanted to do it at the high school level, but I just didn't know how to get in because at the time there wasn't any programs I could find. I was tossing back and forth between, do I really want to go back to school? Do I want to, jump back in debt? Like it was, all of these things kind of going through my head. And so I ended up finding a full time subbing position in LA. And let me tell you, just the passion you have when you do something, you go through, you go through extreme things. So I'm living in at my parents' house at this time, right, in Pomona, and I'm working all the way in South Central LA. So if anyone knows California and knows the commute, that's a 2.5 hour commute daily with traffic, right? And I got to be there at 7 in the morning. So that means I'm leaving my house like 5 o'clock, right? And I'm doing it for like $100 a day because I truly love what I'm doing. And so I did that for a year, but in the process of doing that, I had an administrator say, hey, if you want to make this, a full-time thing where you're getting benefits and things like that, go back to school and, we'll take care of you. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to go back, but I love what I was doing. And so one of the things I went back and did, I got a degree as a counselor because that's one of the things that I always wanted growing up, someone kind of lead and guide for me. So I was like, maybe I can do this for others and then try to bring the tech piece to be a part of it. And so that's how I got into education. As a counselor, it was awesome as well too, because I can pull people aside at the high school level, middle school level. I did both. Use different technology pieces that I had learned in the industry, creating videos, working with WordPress, doing content management stuff with them when kids were absent, using graphic arts. And I'm like, man, I'm actually combining both worlds in what I'm doing. But there was no script for it, right? You kind of just have to kind of find your way. And so, yeah, long story, I tried to shorten it up, but that's how I got into education.
You know,
Into technology.
No, but that's so wonderful because you hit on so many things that I know we talked a little bit on the pre-chat and but you brought those to light. So we're definitely going to highlight a little bit of that as we continue the conversation. But I just really must say, I love a couple of things that you said, going from all A's and I just kind of want to dive in just a little bit deeper on this because I'm just kind of curious. So, going from an all A student back where you were, and then of course you said you moved to the suburbs, and then all of a sudden, that kind of things changed. What was it that you can see or say? Was it like the curriculum, or was it just the overall kind of culture? because being an all A student in one district and then going to another one, and then like you said, you kind of, had some barriers there, you had some difficulties as far as your grades were concerned. What do you attribute that to?
I attribute it to is we weren't learning the same stuff. When it comes down to it, like for instance, I had a Spanish class, right? It was Spanish when I was ninth grader. I'm in the inner city, and I got an A in my Spanish class, right? I'm learning, how to say, different terms and things like that. So, I get an A in Spanish one. So, following year, I'm in the suburbs and I'm in Spanish too, right? And this is just an example. And then in the Spanish too, first day we walk in, the teacher goes, "All right, we're not going to speak any English. We're going to only speak Spanish starting the day." So they're having conversational dialogue. Like I only knew terms. I didn't know how to conjugate verbs. I didn't know how to. They learned all of that in Spanish one at their school, right? And so in math, it was the same thing, where I came in as a sophomore into the school in the suburbs, I think it was algebra two. My freshman year, when I was in the inner city, I had geometry, and the year before that, I had algebra one. So when I go into algebra two at my new school, they're so far along, right? Number one, number two, they had books. Like we didn't even have books where I was, and so that part of it, and then the other piece was, you know, um, at least if I struggled when I was at my school in the inner city, I knew who and to go to and speak with, right? There, it almost seemed like they didn't wanna talk to me, so I'm like, I need help," and they're like there was no tutoring, there was no help, um, you know, learning is social, and so, I felt isolated, right? So when you feel isolated and you're a struggling learner, uh, you really only have 2 options, right? You quit or you figure it out. And I really wanted to quit. I wanted to move back. I wanted to be in an environment where I felt successful. I didn't trust the people I was, you know, now, living amongst. None of the teachers I felt were helping me, and I didn't even know how to really ask for it. And so, I remember my mom saying, she goes, you want to be a stat, you want to be a stud. Like that was her question. She goes, if you're going to be a stat, you're gonna fit the stereotype that they already feel about you. If you want to be a stud, you got to figure it out. And so I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. And so, I touched base to some of my people back over in the city, over in Inglewood, like, is there a program or something like I could be a part of? And they were like, yes, we're bound. See if they have anything like that where you are. And I searched around and they didn't. So what that meant for me was the Upward Bound program. They had Saturday tutoring sessions, but it was at USC. So I would have to take the bus on Saturdays from where I was in Claremont. That was the suburb I was in. I had to take the bus from Claremont to USC, which is about 2 hours, and I was there for 6, 7 hours getting training. And I hated it because if I'm going to school on a Saturday, but what I hated more was feeling like that feeling of not feeling like number one, I belong, and number two, that everybody was smarter than me, and number three, fulfilling everyone's perception about what black students do in school. And so that hit a little harder. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna just take care of it on my Saturday. So I'm gonna come back bigger, better and bigger because I didn't want to be a statistic.
There you go. That's amazing, and thank you so much for sharing that story. Just because, again, I'm always looking to learn things from different perspectives, and
Yeah,
just being here, just my whole life where I'm at, it's like I've always seen just the same thing, but just understanding that a little bit better just really adds more to really like hearing that in your story as well as you continued on, doing the editing and working in editing rooms. It just seemed like it DeJuan's life was kinda like in that isolation state, I guess,
yeah,
when you moved to the suburbs, and then you said just working alone in the dark rooms, editing, and really nobody there. But one thing that I love that you said is that, learning is social, and that's something that's very important, and it really resonates with me because I can definitely see the way when you took those skills that you learned, through university, and you were able to socialize with quote unquote work, and you're like, well, this doesn't even feel like work because I'm helping people.
yeah,
It just makes it that much different. And so that transition also, I want to talk about that and hit that point where you were able to marry those worlds when you were going, doing the designing, the media, all of that good stuff, and then coming into the classroom as a substitute and marrying those worlds. Before we get into that, as a substitute, what is it that you learned during that time that has been probably the most valuable piece of, I guess, learning for you now that you are currently working as an assistant principal? What was it that you still maybe go back to, as far as being a substitute to your current work now?
I think it's this the power of connection and belonging, right? So when I would go into these classrooms as a sub, I mean, I remember what we used to do when we had a sub. It was like, as a sub, we're gonna, figure out a way not to go to class, or we'll sit in different chairs, because it's the sub. They don't know. And so for me, it was the power of connection. So when I would come into the classroom as a sub, um, I had two responsibilities. I felt number one was always to keep the kids safe. Number two, I needed to follow the teacher's lesson plan if they left one. And so for me, what I did, oftentimes the teachers didn't leave lesson plans. So I looked at it as an opportunity to connect with the kids in the classroom. So I would just share stories with them. Like, I would walk in first. I would walk in and I was just like, "Hey, how's everybody doing today?" They're kind of like, "Hey, yeah, yeah, whatever." And I was like, "Hey, I want to share a story with you guys about a relationship I was in, right? When I was in high school, right? And these are high school kids. So they all like, oh yeah, we want to know about this. So you tell them about a story about a heartbreak, right? Or I'll show a video or something, or a commercial I had worked on the screen. They're like, oh, you did that, or you were a part of that. Yeah. And so it would just connect that way. So they felt like they knew who I was, or at least a part of who I was. And for me, it was fun because it was like, hey, like I don't have to be a traditional, and I'm still at this time trying to learn what a teacher does. But I just took some of the things that I learned when I was over at the ID Tech camp, just to build connections with kids. So that's my go-to now is, just being able to connect, and sharing a little bit of your life with them. And then they start to open up and feel like you care, and they start to share a little bit with you. So it got to a point where like the students were requesting me as a sub, and then the teachers I was sub for would request me as well too. Like, oh, like, there wasn't any discipline issues in the class, and Johnny or Susie usually acts out, but they weren't acting out that day because, in my opinion, they were getting a little something that they hadn't had before. And so that connection piece is huge, right? As we talk about learning the social, but you got to be able to connect to the people that are teaching you. Um, and you'll hear kids even to this day, well, I don't do that teacher's work because I don't like that teacher. And I think a lot of times people go, well, it's not about you liking the teacher, but oftentimes that's a huge part of it. Like kids work, not even kids, right? People work for people they feel care about them and they can connect to, period.
No, I
So
agree with you
connection.
100%. Yeah, it's that power of connection. And one thing that I learned is students are going to give you back what you give to them. So
Yep.
if there are some students that do have, just that mentality and that attitude of I'm not going to do your work, well, what is it that we're giving them, as far as the attitude? What is our community? Do we have community in the classrooms? And I think, like you said, the power of connections is something important, for yourself coming in from that tech and the media, and coming into education, and myself coming in from business and then coming into education. I see that there's a big parallel in the way that we kind of married the worlds that we were in and bringing them into the classroom and being highly effective. So I want to kind of ask a question here because I did have a former guest, Matthew Woods, who was on the show, and he said something that really resonates, and even to this day when I listen to that clip, and I want to maybe get your take on it. He said, and he's an administrator, so he says, Fonz, as I walk down the halls, he says, just by walking down the halls and looking through the doors, I can see which teachers came in from outside the traditional college of education setting and the ones that do come in through the college of education. And nothing against that, but it just really resonates. He goes, there's just something different about you that, you're built different in the sense of the way that you see things. So I want to ask you now, as you are now an an assistant principal as well, and you have to kind of do those walkthroughs. What are some of those things that you may notice, or the difference that you see between somebody coming in from industry or outside of education and those that have gone through education?
I think the thing for me is I gotta go through the hall and visit teachers' classrooms is creativity, right? You see it. They're not following necessarily a script. And I think teachers who come from the outside, not saying one is better or not, but I might be a little biased because I came from the outside. You the way they capture their students' attention, right? They're going about it in ways that aren't traditional. And they bring creativity and life into the classroom, and you can see it, right? They're as you walk, maybe they have their doors open, they're greeting kids, right, as they're coming to the classroom. They're sharing a little bit about who they are and their life, right? You can see their walls. They have a story of who they are on their walls so kids can see and relate to. They are learners themselves, right? You know teachers who are learners, and you know teachers who are doing it because they're just comfortable, right? You have teachers who are going to stretch, and as they stretch, their students stretch, and so. But I think the one thing that I see as I go through is just the creativity, right? They're able to connect and create, and they want to learn, and their kids follow suit. And now it's not 100% of the kids, right? You have, some kids who they have different challenges or things going on, but you see the creativity. And I think honestly, in my experience, those teachers are great salesmen and women, right? Because a lot of times they come from business. So you understand, or if you're a good salesman, or you need to understand your target audience, right? Each period of your day is going to be a little different, right? So if you're selling the same way to every period and you got a different target audience in there, if you don't adjust, things can go south real fast. But I truly think great teachers, great educators are great salespeople because they're creative and they know how to connect.
That I really like that. I like again, it's just one of those questions that I often feel like, what's the difference? And like I was talking to you a little bit earlier, for myself, my colleagues that I work with, I'm coming in from a business background. I have our math specialist coming in from, well, I mean, he worked a lot of business. He did a lot of groceries, and so he understands that business aspect of it, management, and then he has his degree, and he's our math specialist now. My colleague also who comes in from network and coming into instructional tech, it just seems like when we're given a task, we always find it like the easiest solution, but it's really like the most creative solution. And it's about improvising, adapting, and overcoming. And that
Man,
has been, those three words have
yes,
been my go to words since I started in education. The ability to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And as being a salesman before and working in marketing, that's really what you're doing with the students and
yeah,
making those connections, and that's something that is so important, but also that creative component that, again, myself not knowing or going through traditional college of education, I had to be creative in how I get my students to buy into what I'm doing and what I'm selling them. But then
yeah,
later on, what I noticed is that that creativity that I was bringing to the classroom for myself to be successful was something that was very contagious for the students as well, as they wanted to be creative too. And then we started building that our community within our
right.
classrooms and allowing them to amplify their creativity. So let's talk a little bit about that in your experience and your experience now. How important was it for you in the classroom? And now is it for you being outside of the classroom as an AP for you to be able to see students amplify their creativity?
It's extremely important. I think one of the things, as you just mentioned about being creative, is when your learners see you take risks, they're more comfortable taking risks, right? As the leader of your classroom. Overall, I truly believe like constraint brings about creativity, right? And that's one of the ones I live by. So as you talk about like the innovation, the adaptation, the overcoming, like when you're in a confined constraint, like the most creative people have found themselves boxed in and they figured a way creatively to get around it. And so that's one of the things that I really like to, as an educator in the classroom, would talk to our students or my students about. I started as a sub, and then I went into being an intervention teacher, right? So as an intervention teacher, I'm helping students who are struggling in language arts or in math. But the great thing about it, right, is it's my will well, if you will. It's I get to teach people, right? I get to, not I have to. I get to teach people how to operate outside the box when it comes to intervention. And so that was my whole thing. And I think that was part of the reason, or is the reason, right, of why I like it so much is being able to teach people how to think outside the box. Because as a learner myself, a lifelong one, I'm always trying to find creative ways to do different things, right? Whether it's out of constraint or just out of curiosity, right? Is being innovative. It's a lifestyle, right? It's something that you want to pour into other people because I truly believe everyone has a creative gene. And as we kind of talked a little bit pre-show, as an educator, you got to fight for it, right? Because it's real easy to kind of go, all right, I'm gonna just do what I need to do so I can get through the day. And sometimes you lose that spark or lose the fire. But when you're creative and you're in that area in which you're truly influencing others, learners see it. But learn teachers have to continually want to learn, stretch themselves, be uncomfortable, and not just for the sake of encouraging or inspiring others, but to truly be an educator. I don't think you can truly be a lifelong learner or educator and just go, all right, I'm gonna just stay here. No, the pendulum continually moves, right? And so, we want to be able to teach our kids that and continue to grow in that area.
Excellent. Well, speaking about moving that pendulum forward, and we talked about this, and I said, I want to get your take on this. In the current state of education, we've heard the phrase for the longest time. I think as long as I've been in education, maybe like I don't know, this is my 17th year. So maybe let's just say maybe 11 years back or started hearing this like, we got to get our students ready for the 21st century. We got to get our students ready, like 21st century skills. I was like, right now, I'm already thinking about the 31st century, And of course,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, we're talking about like, Web3, we're talking about all of these things. So I want to get your take on this, being and seeing that you are very, in touch with the technology as well, technology piece from your background, and of course as a lifelong learner like you said. And I truly feel like in our conversation I can pick up that maybe you are a multi-passionate creative like myself, kind of dipping
Yeah.
your toes in everything. And I actually wrote a blog about that, how that kind of gets me into a lot of trouble sometimes finding that balance. But I want to learn everything. But I want to get your take on this. What can we currently do in the current state of education, or what is it that we have to look forward to also get our teachers ready for that 31st century skills, future of work, future of learning, and also so they can pass that on to the students as well. What are some of the things that maybe in your own personal research, trends, things that you see will be coming that we need to work on?
Uh, no, great question. I think one of those things is the Web3, right? If we talked about, blockchain technology, DAOs, all of those things. I mean, nationwide, there's a teaching shortage, right? And it may be a different topic as far as why there is one, but um, I think one of the things as we talk about blockchain, Web3, metaverse, and all of those things is ownership. Not only ownership in the sense of students being able to, have ownership over their, credentialing, their transcripts, their diplomas, and things like that, and operating that way on blockchain. I think that's a future thing. But I think as it relates to teaching and facilitating, right, and personalized learning, I truly believe, as you talk about 31st century, right, is you know the classroom looking different as it relates to it not just being brick and mortar, right? Where the school itself isn't the school building itself isn't the place where all the learning happens, right? Facilitating that out through online environments or or through creative means, or through the metaverse, or the eduverse, or whatever term we want to call it. I think teaching looks different. It's being a learning experience designer, right? When I walk into a classroom, as a student, right, there is nothing the teacher is going to teach me that I can't look up on Google. There isn't. Right? Right? As a high school student, if I go into the classroom, whatever my teacher is going to teach me about math or about English or about science, for the most part, if I, was interested enough, I could look it up on Google. Right? But what we have to understand is we're creating learning environments, right? You're creating experience. And so why is that experience in your classroom or different than me going to Google to look it up? Because if I can just go to Google and look it up, then I'm not going to have any interest in what you're telling me. So your experience has to be authentic. It has to be unique. And I think as teachers, we got to find a way. And I know we keep using this word connect, but it's really building relationships, right? Sharing a little bit about who you are, giving the students an experience in the classroom, and you learn this in business that they can't go anywhere else and get. Right? People don't go to Starbucks because they want coffee. Right? It's cheaper to make it at home.
Yeah.
Right? They go because they get an experience. And I think we really got to have that mindset of thinking, right, we're providing experiences for students. It's not just, getting in what's in the textbook because, 10, 20 years from now, textbooks aren't going to be here. Right?
Yeah.
So just having that mindset that you're creating learning experiences for students, and those experiences don't only have to take place in your brick and mortar classroom.
No, I love that. And even going back to textbooks, and this is a conversation that my math content specialist and myself had, and stating, even the books that we're using today, we do 10-year adoptions. I was like, so we're not even getting recent information, for our
Right.
students during that time. Things change on the daily, on the fly, hourly, and it's just a matter more so, like you said, all that information that's in the book, I can Google it, but how about teaching students, those evergreen skills like the collaboration piece and adding that into your curriculum, communication skills, how to
Yeah.
find information that's relevant, information that is truth and decipher between what is right, what is wrong when they get that information and just to continue to move forward. Because really those are the skills that you and I use on the daily. We need to learn how to collaborate, we need to learn how to build those relationships. We need to learn how to communicate. And the better we do that, the more successful we are in, our field and in our area. Well, the same thing goes for students, future of learning, future of work, but also understanding things will change. The technology piece will continue to move forward. And that ownership of being able to say, you know what, thanks to blockchain technology, it's like if I have this here in my transcript, or I have maybe this support that travels with me
Yeah.
continually without changing, and I am the owner of all of that
You
information.
own
That's
it.
something. Yes, and that's the beautiful part about it. So, yeah, I'm really excited about that, and so thank you so much, DeJuan, for just your insight and your passion. I really appreciate you. I want to give a shout out to Coach William Jeffrey, also who's joining us from LinkedIn. We've got Amanda, also part of the ED3 educators and the DAO as well. So GM to you, my friend, as well. Thank you, Mel from Colombia, for joining us as well. So I appreciate you being part of this conversation as well. As Dewan and I are having some fun, and we can probably go on like another show. So we'll definitely have to do a part two of
Yeah.
this, and we'll definitely bring you back, Dewan. But it's been an honor and a pleasure to speak to you and hear your story, hear your experiences. But what I love is the way that you married your passion for ed tech and brought it into the education space, build that community, build up your students, and now as an AP, having the opportunity to make a greater impact too, as well as you just continually bring that world into the education space, and you're maybe be a wonderful person to start bringing in that Web3 conversation into your school setting and into your district. So we always
I
are
hope
looking
so.
for
That's the
people.
plan. That's the plan.
Yeah, there you go. People out that think outside the box and think creatively, can improvise, adapt, and overcome. And you definitely got it, my friend. So thank you so much. But before we end, as always, this is one of my, I'm going to give a shout out to Josh Tovar, who is a principal also here in Texas. And this is his favorite question. that I always get to ask all the guests, and he's always tuning in for this. So, Josh, if you're listening, here we go. So, all right, Dewan, in the current state of education, through all the experience that you've had, what would you say currently is your edu kryptonite?
Oh, um, edu kryptonite. I would say just like stagnation. I guess that would be it. Stagnation, right? As far as organizations being stagnant, education being stagnant, people like that to me pulls at my heart because I like to think of myself as one who's always trying to move forward and is a forward thinker. And I will intentionally put myself in positions where I'm uncomfortable because I want to learn and grow. And so oftentimes, especially since COVID, right, which is still here, but you had teachers who were forced to use some of these technology components. But now that things are kind of relaxed, they're going back to what they were doing before. And that kills me because I'm like, no, we were right there. Like, don't go back. Like, figure out what you were doing and move forward with it. So I think just encouraging and inspiring hope in those who are going back without, being mad or frustrated. Right. So I think that's probably my edgy kryptonite right now.
And that's something that I want to touch on a little bit, because what happened is, and this is, I think, what I'm seeing. Okay, so we went away from brick and mortar. We went online. We went virtual. Students had Chromebooks. They're learning. It was very difficult for a lot of teachers. For myself, it was like I was a fish in water. I had just received my master's in educational technology that December of 2019. And then March 13 comes around and we're shut down. And I was like, all right, it's go time. Like, this is what I was built for. This is what I've been training for. And it was great and all, and some of the teachers really embraced it, some of the teachers found it very difficult. Obviously, that component of not understanding now that as teachers, we were guests in our students' homes. Now
Right.
we saw the reality of where they're coming from. We saw the true things that we don't see in the brick and mortar, and that was shocking for a lot of teachers. So I think that there was a lot of that happened where the students were just not engaged. It was very different, and teachers started kind of seeing that weakness, those components of, hey, you know what? I need to adapt to this learning style, to this teaching style, and so on. So what I noticed is when we came back for our first full year, which was this last year that we've completed, it just seemed like those devices were actually they were just put back into those carts, never touched, gathered dust. There was such an anti-tech push that I saw, which to me, like you said, I was excited because I was like, we're there. This is
Yeah.
what I've been dreaming for. This is what we're doing. This is where the future of learning is. And everything just kind of stopped. And then I started thinking a little bit more and saying, okay, I'm seeing things differently. I want to see things from a different perspective. And then so I started thinking, I was like, is it because of kind of like that trauma that they associate that device with COVID? And they're like, I don't want any of that. I don't want to go through that. I don't want to go through that trauma of me not knowing and being vulnerable and being, I guess, find out that I really am not an expert in what people think I'm an expert in. But that's where that vulnerability component comes in, where I think it's important to understand that it's okay to not know everything, and give your learners a chance to really engage in the learning and to even teach you,
Yeah.
they've been in school for, let's say, 9 years, or so or more, depending on what grade level you teach. And they're pretty good at knowing what works for them and what doesn't work for them. Unfortunately, we never ask them what works for them and what doesn't work for them, you
You
know?
touch on an important thing. It's right, being vulnerable. And I think as leaders on our campuses, being that way with your teachers and with your students, because it's really moving from, the term sage on the stage to you're a facilitator. And that doesn't mean you know it all, but you help create the environment and the experiences where people can learn. And I think that's the where we are and where we're moving towards. But it takes a lot of vulnerability to get there, and so that, like I said, that's my edge of kryptonite. It's like, all right, I need to be a little bit more vulnerable, so I can help move everybody along, so we can get to where we're trying to go. So, yep,
Yeah.
I agree.
All right. All right, Dewan. Question number two. If
Yes,
you
sir.
could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Um, First, it would be, Lakers win championship for the. I was playing. My Lakers aren't doing too good, but it's a quote from Nelson Mandela. I put it on the tag of my email all the time, and it just says, "May your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears." And so I want to be a person that are making choices based on hope and not fear. And it's easy to hold on to the fear piece of it, right? So as we kind of just talked a little bit about vulnerable, right? Being vulnerable isn't something that naturally comes easy to me, right? But the hope is that when I am, that I can help inspire and empower others. And so, yeah, may your choices reflect your hopes, not your.
Excellent. I love that. All right, here we go. Last question. Dewan, if this was your podcast this morning and I was a guest on your show, what would be one question you'd like to ask me?
Uh, Question I would ask Fonz is, um, what do you want your legacy to be, as it relates to not just ed tech, but you when it's all said and done? What do you want people to say about it?
All right, that's a great question. I would love for people to say he was a connector, a connector. Oftentimes I think to myself and people, say, oh, you've got a great show, you've got this. But sometimes I think it's like, well, why do I do what I do? Like, sometimes I still think like, is it worth it? Is it making a difference and so on? And I just continue being consistent with it because of this. Dewan, I would have never probably had a conversation with you had we not connected through, our space over here with the DAO and so on and that coffee talk and to say, hey, I want to meet up and let's do this and so on. But the whole point for me too is I don't not just want to connect for myself, but I want other people to connect with you. I want other people to hear your story. I want other people to learn from all of our experiences collectively so we can be 1% better every day or take that little knowledge nugget that today maybe you shared that a teacher's going to say, "Oh wow, I never thought about it that way. Let me sprinkle it on to what I'm already doing great and enhance that learning experience for the student or just for themselves to fan that flame." So for me, it's just being a connector. I want to put people together, pair them up, and so that way they can do some amazing things and collectively just continue to move the education needle forward. So that's really where I'm at, man. That's what I would love for people to know me by as he was a great connector and the education is somewhat a little bit better because of that. So yeah, that's a great question, man. You got me good.
No, man, hey, but I mean, you were doing exactly what you say you want your legacy to be, right? You were connecting people. We'll call you Fonz the collector. That's gonna be my name. A connector. I'm sorry, Fonz
There
the
you
connector.
go.
That's what I'm gonna
There
call
you
you. But no, you're doing just that. So
Yeah,
thank you for
man.
the
Well,
question.
thank you so much, Dewan. I really appreciate it. And Dewan, before we wrap up, can you please tell our audience members and those that'll be listening to the show later on, what's the best way that they can connect with you?
The best way is right now. It's probably on at Twitter. It's at DJ underscore innovate. Innovate is INNOV and then the number 8. So that's the best way to connect. I'm also on Instagram, but I tend to be on Twitter a little bit more. So if you're trying to reach out, uh, at DJ underscore innovate on Twitter,
Perfect.
and then yeah, that's the best way.
There you go. And of course, you'll find all of that info on the show notes as well. And then that way you can go ahead and click on those links and make sure you do connect with Dewan. I mean, right now, recommendations for any other podcasters out there, definitely make sure you get Dewan. You're definitely going to have a great conversation. You're going to be learning a lot and your audience members will definitely learn a lot from that. So thank you so much. And to all of you that joined us, I want to give a shout out to Mel, who joined us from Colombia. I know right now she's got a celebrating creativity event that'll be happening right now live on Twitter. So make sure you check her out. If you're watching this live, of course, if you're listening to the recording, still go back to that channel and you'll be able to see some amazing guests share how they amplify their creativity. I want to thank also Amanda Macias longtime listener, former guest, passionate educator, passionate Web3, educator as well. Thank you so much for joining. Coach William Jeffrey, also an amazing education leader. I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for all of your support as always. And also, from the bottom of my heart, to every single one of you, like I always say, those of you that support our show, share our episodes, share our clips, drop us reviews. Thank you so much. As always, we strive for excellence. So please make sure that you visit our website at myedtech.life, myedtech.life, where you can go ahead and catch this amazing episode and all of our wonderful, amazing episodes, where I guarantee that you will find something that you need for that specific moment in time that you can take and add to what you're already doing great to just, fan that flame or share that passion with your students. Also, please make sure that you stop by and drop us a review, drop us a line, let us know what we're doing great, let us know what we can work on. I'm always open to feedback because, as always, we want to make sure that we bring you the best. But also, don't forget, guys, our mission, our vision, and our passion is to always connect educators, education professionals, and creators one show at a time. And if you want to be part of that mission and contribute to that mission, please stop by our store where you can get yourself some merch. We've got some nice caps, we've got some nice shirts that you can go ahead and get. And again, all of this goes back to the show to make sure that we continue to bring you the best as always. So thank you so much for all of you and all of your support. And my friends, until next time, as always, like the sign says up here, don't forget, stay techie. We'll see you next time.